LoveLore Library. Chapter 137. Shang Junlin's heart softened when he thought about how Xinyu woke up and waited for him after he went out for a while. He gently patted Xinyu's back, intending to coax him back to sleep. Xinyu grabbed Shang Junlin's collar tightly. His mouth opened and closed as if he was saying something, but no sound came out. "You?" Shang Junlin whispered. Xinyu pressed closer to Shang Junlin and didn't respond. Shang Junlin hugged Xinyu and lowered his head to plant a light kiss on her forehead. Then, he moved down and finally landed on her lips. Xinyu didn't have any intention to resist and let him do whatever he wanted. Shang Junlin barely stopped himself before he lost control. Surrounded by a familiar scent, Xinyu's tense nerves gradually relaxed and his consciousness slipped into a sweet dream. When he woke up, the sky was already bright. Xinyu sat up with the quilt in his arms. He still had some recollection of what happened last night. He looked around but couldn't find Shang Junlin. Mu Shi came in to serve him when she heard the noise. "Is His Majesty not here?" "His Majesty went to the morning court and hasn't come back yet." Mu Shi paused and was a little surprised. Her young master rarely asked this question. Why did he suddenly ask today? Xinyu didn't ask because he knew that Shang Junlin wasn't here, most likely because he went to the morning court or because he was delayed by something after the court. It was normal to not see him when he woke up in the morning. He asked today because he was a little concerned about what happened last night. He didn't know if it was a dream or reality. Young master's clothes are a little small. The Shangyi Bureau should send new clothes over in 2 days. Mu Shi tidied up Xinyu's clothes and said. Suddenly, her hand paused. While she was moving, she saw the red marks on Xinyu's lapel. Compared to the panic she had when she first saw these marks, Mu Shi was now able to keep a straight face. After all, she had seen it too many times. No matter how surprised she was at the beginning, she didn't feel anything later on. She was the head palace maid of Yuzhang Palace. Xinyu's identity was the emperor. His Majesty had always lived in Yuzhang Palace. It was normal for something to happen. Xinyu straightened his sleeves and said, "It is indeed a little small." She didn't know if it was because the imperial palace was especially nurturing. Xinyu had put on some weight and his complexion was better. He was much taller than when he entered the imperial palace. He couldn't wear the clothes he brought into the imperial palace now. Did anything happen last night? After washing up, Xinyu drank a cup of warm water and asked. No, why do you ask? It seemed that Mu Shi didn't know what happened last night. It wasn't strange. The hidden dragon guards came and went like ghosts. I was wondering why the robbers were so clear about the number of troops we sent. It turns out that someone had already leaked it. So, our every move is under the other side's surveillance. Lord Feng is an important minister in the cabinet and knows more secrets than we do. Just how much of these secrets did he reveal to the other side? Is Lord Feng really in cahoots with the Northern Desert? This was the last question they urgently needed to know. If Lord Feng really was in cahoots with the Northern Desert, they had to prepare early. This matter will be handled by the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Justice. We want a result as soon as possible. It wasn't just Shang Junlin. The other ministers also wanted a result as soon as possible. The officials who were usually close to Lord Feng's faction paled. Shang Junlin's move was truly too sudden. Without giving anyone any time to react, the aristocratic families lost a third of their positions in the cabinet. Lord Duan was so angry that he was trembling. He had sensed that something was wrong with Lord Feng during this period of time, but he had never imagined that Lord Feng would be so bold as to commit such a crime. Even if the aristocratic families wanted to protect him, they couldn't. Because of Lord Feng's matter, the factions in the court were once again in turmoil. While they were worried, many people turned their eyes to the vacated position of Lord Feng's faction. Especially Lord Feng's position. That was the cabinet. Ever since the Prime Minister became the cabinet, there hadn't been any changes in the cabinet for the past 6 years. Now that there was finally a vacant position, all the factions wanted to send their own people to it. When Shang Junlin returned from the court, Shen Yu asked him about what happened last night. Shang Junlin didn't hide anything and told him about capturing Lord Feng and the person who was in cahoots with Lord Feng. Your Majesty, why did you take action directly this time? How did the court react? The hidden dragon guards had already found out where the group of people were staying in the capital. They caught all of them last night. There's no need for Feng Pingqi to stay any longer. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to capture the person behind the scenes, Shang Junlin would have already dealt with him based on the fact that Lord Feng attacked Shen Yu. These few days, the hidden dragon guards had been paying close attention to Lord Feng's movements. After being pressured by Shang Junlin a few times, Lord Feng finally couldn't take it anymore and found the person behind the scenes. Their actions were very secretive, but no matter how secretive they were, they couldn't escape the eyes of the hidden dragon guards who were already prepared. Through the person who contacted Lord Feng, the hidden dragon guards found out where the group of people were staying in the capital. Isn't it because the power behind him was also arrested? Shen Yu didn't believe that Lord Feng had revealed the truth because he had suddenly repented. People who had abandoned their bottom line wouldn't cry until they saw the coffin. This is also a big reason. At first, he refused to say anything. Later, the Ministry of Justice took him to watch the execution, so he became honest. The one who was punished was naturally the person who had been cooperating with him. Since the prisoner was sent to them, the Ministry of Justice naturally wanted to find out some useful information. The Ministry of Justice acted quickly. According to the clues given by Lord Feng, they arrested many people who were hiding in the capital. However, Lord Feng's information was limited. Although he had cooperated with the other party for many years, he still didn't know the other party's real background. If Lord Feng is telling the truth and he didn't collude with the people of the Northern Desert, then what about the power behind him? Did they collude with the Northern Desert? Other than the Northern Desert, what about other countries? Shen Yu touched his chin and thought, is there any connection between that power and the one who has been helping the King of Yu? Yu suspects that they are the people left behind by the late emperor. Shang Junlin reacted. I'm not sure. It's just a guess. Whether it's true or not depends on the results of the investigation by the Ministry of Justice. It would be best if they could catch the people behind the King of Yu. Chapter 138. The person behind Prince Yu was a knot in Shen Yu's heart. In his previous life, he worked for Prince Yu, but he did not really come into contact with that power. If the situation was not urgent, that power would not have helped him. Shen Yu had always thought that the force helped him because King of Yu had saved young Master He. What happened in this life was different from what happened in his previous life. He also knew some secrets that he didn't know in his previous life, so his view of the force changed. He didn't have much of a clue as to whose orders they were following and what their objectives were. Shang Junlin stroked Shen Yu's wrist. I have always asked the hidden dragon guards to investigate Prince Yu. I also took the opportunity to find out more about Prince Yu's fief. Speaking of which, the person who gave Prince Yu the proverb has been caught. Shen Yu's thoughts were immediately pulled back. Your Majesty, are you talking about the person who asked Prince Yu to get close to me and Shen Qingran? That's right. The hidden dragon guards have secretly brought that person to the capital. He should arrive in a few days. Shang Junlin's tone was as cold as before when he mentioned that person. Your Majesty, don't forget to bring me to see him. Shen Yu was very concerned about whether the proverb was true or not and why the other party said such words. I won't forget. Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's hand and kissed it. No matter what, you can only be mine. Shang Junlin did not care about the proverb, whoever gets the Shen family will get the world. All he wanted was Shen Yu. Of course. Shen Yu took the opportunity to hug Shang Junlin's neck and looked up, Your Majesty can only be mine. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. He held the back of Shen Yu's head and pulled him towards himself. Then, he leaned forward and kissed him. He also loved Yu, who was showing his possessiveness to him. The imperial palace was warm and quiet, but the front court had stirred up quite a few waves. After announcing Lord Feng's crimes, Shang Junlin dismissed all the officials involved and sent them to prison. No matter how much these people participated, it was impossible for them to return to their original positions in this lifetime. This matter involved a lot of people. If an official was dismissed, then an official position would be vacated. With the loss of Lord Feng's bloodline in the imperial court, the originally stable situation was suddenly broken. Everyone wanted a share of the spoils. Official Feng had been in the court for many years and had many officials working under him. Among them, there was no lack of third-rank and second-rank officials. Now that these officials had been stripped of their positions and Shang Junlin had not immediately appointed new officials, both the aristocratic families and the commoners had their eyes on these officials. If it were not for the fact that he did not have a chance, do you think he would let the aristocratic families ride on his head for so long? We all know what kind of character His Majesty is. Previously, regarding the matter of women entering the imperial court as officials, even if official Feng and official Duan did not agree, His Majesty could still use other ways to force you to agree. Then what can we do? Are we just going to watch this position be taken by others? What else can we do? The Feng family is very powerful. Before this incident, many aristocratic families were on good terms with them. Right now, they don't even have enough time to worry about themselves. How can they have the heart to resist His Majesty? As soon as these words came out, the room fell into a short silence. Not to mention others, their own families were on good terms with the Feng family. They were afraid that they would accidentally be implicated. It was enough to protect themselves from being punished. How could they have the heart to do anything else? It's all thanks to the Feng family's influence that we were able to easily achieve our goal this time. In the afternoon, Shang Junlin and Shen Yu were resting in the pavilion. When they talked about the matters of the imperial court, Shang Junlin spoke up. His Majesty is in a fit of anger. Who dares to provoke him at this time? Shen Yu chuckled. If they are willing to settle down, it will make it easier for His Majesty to act. Compared to the uncertain ownership of power, these aristocratic families obviously valued themselves more. The Ministry of Justice found out a lot of things, but Feng Pingqi refused to admit that he was in cahoots with the foreign enemy. No matter how they tortured him, he insisted that he did not know about it. Shang Junlin rubbed the teacup in his hand, his eyes unreadable. Does His Majesty believe his words? Has official Feng always been involved with the Northern Sioux, or only this matter? Shen Yu asked. This matter is not a matter of whether Zhen believes it or not. Zhen needs a definite answer. If he really was in cahoots with the Northern Mo, the imperial court would have to prepare early. Shang Junlin did not tell Shen Yu that because official Feng had schemed against Shen Yu, he was given special care in the Ministry of Justice. The possibility of him lying was not high, but even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance of him lying, it could not happen. The Northern Mo and the Great Huan dynasty had been enemies for a long time. If they really knew the Great Huan dynasty like the back of their hand, the consequences would be unimaginable. The imperial court's movements were not small. The people of Jing also sensed something. Their expressions were not as relaxed as before. After official Feng and the others were arrested, the imperial court learned about the matter of the Northern Sioux officials being in cahoots with the foreign enemy. God damn it, the ones who stole the relief supplies were not bandits, but the high-ranking officials of the Northern Sioux. What do they want to do? If it weren't for His Majesty, the Northern Sioux might not have been able to return to the Great Huan dynasty. Those officials were born and raised in the Great Huan dynasty. Don't they know what the situation was like when the Northern Sioux was invaded? How could they not know? They just don't want to care about the lives of the people. Otherwise, why would they try so hard to hide the drought in the Northern Sioux region? They only care about their own enjoyment. They really are worthless. Directly killing them is letting them off too easily. If it were up to me, these traitors should be hacked to pieces. No wonder it rained on the day they were executed. Even the heavens couldn't stand it. It rained as soon as they died. It's all thanks to His Majesty's keen observation that he sent official Fong over to expose their background. His Majesty is naturally wholeheartedly for the people. None of the things taken from the houses of the corrupt officials were put into the national treasury. They were all left in the Northern Sioux region. Because official Feng's matter had not been concluded, it was not announced yet. The neighbors were all talking about the Northern Sioux region. The opera troupe that had been instructed by Xinyu previously arranged a new play about the Northern Sioux region. After showing it to Xinyu, it started to perform in the capital. This troupe leader really knows how to seize the opportunity. Xinyu sighed after reading the script presented by the opera troupe. Shang Junlin glanced at it while reading the script. This is based on the play Return to Spring that you were sitting in front of, right? He is indeed a smart person. The story of the play was based on the Northern Sioux region, but it was not exactly the same. It would only make people think about the Northern Sioux region after watching it. Xinyu finished reading the script and handed it to Mu Shi. Tell them that they can rehearse the play, but there are some places that they can't cross the line. Mu Shi accepted the order and left. Yu is interested in these. Shang Junlin stopped writing and asked curiously. No, it's just that the script was sent over, so I casually took a look. Xinyu was indeed not interested in these things. By the way, does His Majesty know much about Junling? It seemed to have bloomed 2 days ago. The grass that was sent by Imperial Physician Gu. Shang Junlin had always been very concerned about the flowers and plants sent by other people, who were the only ones that Xinyu treated specially. Xinyu nodded. Just as Shang Junlin was almost done with his work, Xinyu wanted to go with him to take a look. As soon as he got close, he smelled a faint fragrance. Xinyu walked closer and found that a few days had passed, and the bud had already opened. The flower was very small. Although it was in the state of bloom, it was only the size of a finger. The petals were completely piled up together. The outer layer was light green, and the deeper it was, the whiter it was. Near the center, it was the color of jade. Xinyu had never seen the Junling in full bloom, so he couldn't help but slow down his breathing. It's so beautiful. Yu took good care of it. Shang Junlin looked at the flower and then turned his gaze to Xinyu. Junling was a kind of plant that was very difficult to raise. Shang Junlin didn't know where Imperial Physician Gu got this flower and why he gave it to Xinyu. But when he saw Xinyu's surprised look when the flower bloomed, his heart slightly itched. Yu is very happy. Xinyu looked back at Shang Junlin, and his eyes were full of amazement. I just didn't expect it to be so beautiful when it bloomed. Although it wasn't as gorgeous as other flowers, it was simple and elegant to the extreme. It was also a kind of beauty that couldn't be ignored. Xinyu liked all beautiful things. If you like it, I will ask people to find more. Shang Junlin held the young man's face and kissed his eyes that were more dazzling than the starry sky. Chapter 139. Xinyu closed her eyes and felt a warm kiss on her eyelids. The sun shone through the gap and half of it fell on their bodies, as if they were covered with a layer of golden gauze. Xinyu reached out and grabbed Shang Junlin's collar. She felt the man's breath moving downwards, and finally, their lips touched. Shin Yu's hand, which was tightly holding the collar, fell down weakly. In a trance, her body was lifted into the air. When she came back to her senses, she was already on the bed in the bedroom. What does His Majesty want to do? Shin Yu's finger pressed against Shang Junlin's lips. It's not even the 10th day yet. You. Shang Junlin's dark eyes were like a bottomless abyss, sucking in the people who were looking at them. Light and shadow swayed, and everything was fading away. Imperial Physician Gu came to check Shin Yu's pulse as usual. Before he entered, he was brought to the side hall by Eunuch Meng. Guijun and His Majesty have something to do. Imperial Physician Gu, please rest here for a while. It was the first time Imperial Physician Gu encountered such a situation. Although he was puzzled, he didn't ask much. After waiting for about half an hour, Eunuch Meng came in and brought him to the main hall. Shin Yu was lazily leaning on the soft couch. Her eyes were moist, and her lips were redder than usual. Imperial Physician Gu looked straight ahead and finished checking her pulse. Guijuan's body is fine as usual. Shin Yu supported himself to sit up. Shang Junlin, who was beside him, helped him up. Shin Yu couldn't help but glare at him. He didn't know what happened today. After the kiss, Shang Junlin carried Shin Yu, who was still in a daze, back to the bedroom and bullied her from inside out. Shin Yu didn't expect Shang Junlin's sudden action and was easily taken. If Imperial Physician Gu didn't check his pulse, he didn't know how long he would have been bullied. Imperial Physician Gu, do you still remember the Junling that was sent here before? It has bloomed. It was rare for Junling to bloom. Shin Yu felt that he should inform Imperial Physician Gu, the previous owner. Imperial Physician Gu was stunned for a moment and said the same thing as Shang Junlin, Your Highness has taken good care of it. Why did Imperial Physician Gu also say such words? Shin Yu was curious. One of the reasons why Junling is so rare is that it's not easy to grow. This subject obtained one by accident in the past. I raised it for many years but it didn't bloom. I didn't expect it to bloom in the first year it was sent to Your Highness. Imperial Physician Gu smiled. Giving it to Your Highness was the right decision. Is there anything special about it when it blooms? Shin Yu only knew that Junling was rare and had great benefits for the human body. It's all rumors. It said that Junling can only bloom under the care of a fated person. This subject doesn't think so. Flowers and plants are the same. If they want to bloom, they must meet the conditions. Maybe Your Highness has met the conditions for it to bloom. Shin Yu was more inclined to Imperial Physician Gu's second theory. It was like some flowers bloomed once a year and some bloomed once every 3 years. It was impossible for it to bloom before the flowering period. No longer dwelling on the matter of Junling, Shin Yu changed the topic and asked about another matter. Has Imperial Physician Gu received any news about my younger brother? Shin Yu still remembered Imperial Physician Gu's worried expression for Gu Huai. At that time, Gu Huai's task was at a critical stage and he couldn't have any contact with the outside world. After the matter was resolved, he didn't know if he thought of a way to send a message to Imperial Physician Gu. Thank you for your concern. This subject received a letter from my younger brother 2 days ago. He went out to handle some matters and will be back soon. Gu Huai had been with him since he was young. When he left for a few days, Imperial Physician Gu was not used to it. After a long time, he got better. After a few more words with Imperial Physician Gu, Shang Junlin's gaze became more and more unfriendly. Shin Yu had no choice but to let Imperial Physician Gu go. Why did Your Majesty scare Imperial Physician Gu just now? Shin Yu turned his head and looked at Shang Junlin with dissatisfaction. Why did you keep talking to him? Shang Junlin was even more dissatisfied. He had just eaten a mouthful to satisfy his craving and was interrupted. How could he be nice to him? Your Majesty is really unreasonable. You broke the agreement and blame others. Shen Yu raised his eyebrows and reached out to cover Shang Junlin's eyes. We agreed to meet once every 10 days. Your Majesty, you said it yourself. How many days is it today? Shang Junlin pulled down Shen Yu's hand and bit it lightly. Yu also likes it very much. She keeps clinging to me and won't let go. If your Majesty knows when to stop every time, it's not impossible to make an exception once in a while. Shen Yu cast a sidelong glance at him. Because Shen Yu had agreed to meet once every 10 days, Shang Junlin seemed to release the beast in his heart every time the time was up. It was not that he did not want to restrain himself, but with his sweetheart in his arms and the permission to do it once every few days, he could not control himself at all. It was not easy to have a meal, so he had to eat until he was full. This caused Shen Yu to be bedridden for a day or two every time after they did it. It was only today that Shang Junlin reluctantly stopped because he wanted Imperial Physician Gu to check his pulse. If Yu did not ask to meet once every 10 days, I would not. Shang Junlin coughed and did not continue speaking. Shen Yu understood his unfinished words. He was not really disgusted with this matter. It was instinctive to have intimate contact with the person he liked. He was no exception, but, before he could fully adapt to it, Shang Junlin should still be a vegetarian. Shen Yu thought expressionlessly. As if he knew what he was thinking, Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's waist and pulled him into his arms. Shen Yu had just been tormented, and the lingering arousal on his body had not completely dissipated. Under the man's sudden action, he trembled slightly. The redness spread along his cheeks and into his clothes. Shang Junlin's eyes darkened. The hand on Shen Yu's waist massaged gently, relieving the discomfort. Shen Yu squinted his eyes. Your Majesty, do you know how Gu Huai sent the letter back? The drowsy Shen Yu did not forget his curiosity. Shang Junlin's hand paused for a moment. As Shen Yu muttered in dissatisfaction, he continued to massage him. It was sent back together with Fang Jun's letter. Fang Jun only sent that one letter back to the capital, and it was sent back together with the people who had just gone to the capital. Shang Junlin added. Your Majesty, would Lord Fang be surprised to see that Miss Fang also went to Subei? Fang Jiayi was added later. She was not on the list that was sent to Subei first. If Fang Jun saw her, he would probably think that I was oppressing the Fang family. Fang Jun was surprised that his daughter was sent here without a word. Later, when he saw He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing, he roughly understood Shang Junlin's thoughts. Lord, our people have already talked with the Northern Desert. They said that they spent a lot of money to buy those things and are not willing to return them to us. They also insisted that they did not collude with the criminal Madame Ho and the others. The official who returned from the Northern Desert reported. What do you think? Fang Jun asked in a deep voice. The Northern Desert's reaction was as he expected. It would be strange if the other party admitted it directly. Fang Jun did not intend to get the things back in one go. This time, he just wanted to test the other party's attitude. In my opinion, if we want to recover this batch of goods, it is difficult to achieve our goal by negotiation alone. We must give them enough deterrence while negotiating so that they will not be fearless. The others nodded. Why were the Northern Desert people so arrogant? Wasn't it because they did not dare to do anything to the Northern Desert? What if they did not have this backing? Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu were in charge of investigating the Northern Desert people who had sneaked into Subei. They were newcomers and were not on the list. They simply disguised themselves as ordinary rich people and walked around the city. They got the clues about the Northern Desert people from Lord Fang Jun that Yaoji had given them. They wanted to see if they could find the hiding place of this group of people through other methods. Those people stayed in Subei. They must have some ulterior motive. Now that the people they have been cooperating with, or should I say the umbrella, are gone, they must find new people to cooperate with. In the restaurant, He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing sat opposite each other. Jiang Huiqing dipped his finger in water and wrote the word Shang on the table. Brother Qingyu, what kind of people do you think are most likely to be selected? According to Miss Yaoji, those who can get in touch with those people are not only officials, but also some rich merchants. Now that the officials in Subei have changed, the stable relationship between the three parties has lost a corner. There is bound to be some friction. This is our chance. They looked at each other and saw the tacit understanding in each other's eyes. The next day, the business circle in Subei received the news that a generous merchant had come to Subei. It was said that he wanted to come out of Subei to buy some exotic treasures. This was not surprising. Over the years that Dahuan and the Northern Desert had maintained a peaceful relationship, there had always been merchants entering the Northern Desert through Subei. Not long ago, there was a merchant surnamed Yen who came out of Subei. It was said that the goods brought by the merchant surnamed Yen were very popular in the Northern Desert, especially among the Northern Desert women. With his rich family background, He Qingyu successfully entered the business circle in Subei. Their appointment had not been announced yet, so they acted independently of the government. The only one who knew their movements was Lord Fang. Fang Jiayi stayed by Lord Fang's side to help. The failure of the first negotiation had left a psychological shadow in many people's hearts. Compared to the Northern Desert, they had more concerns. After all, no one knew how long the Northern Desert people had been lurking in Subei and how deep their understanding of Subei was. Before they figured this out, they wouldn't be able to do anything. When it came to the candidates for the next negotiation with the Northern Desert, Fang Jiayi stepped forward. I am willing to give it a try. Well, you are a woman after all. Won't it be inconvenient? What's the difference between a man and a woman in the face of righteousness? Since I dared to speak, I must be confident. Instead of choosing someone who is unwilling to fail again, why don't you let me try? In terms of eloquence, few could compete with Fang Jiayi. After a few words, all the officials were speechless. In the end, they had to admit that Fang Jiayi was more suitable for the negotiation than anyone else. Miss Fang made the right choice this time. When Xinyu heard the news from Shang Junlin, he couldn't help but laugh. The scene of this girl insulting the Prince of Yu was still vivid in his mind. Xinyu had never seen the Prince of Yu being insulted like this. Your Majesty, Your Highness, the Clothing Bureau has sent the clothes. Eunuch Meng walked in with his head lowered. Let them in. As soon as Shang Junlin's voice fell, several palace servants came in with the clothes in their hands. Because of Shang Junlin's attention, these clothes were all made of the best materials, styles, and colors according to Xinyu's preferences. You, take a look and see if you like it. Shang Junlin walked over with Xinyu and looked at the clothes one by one. His eyes stopped on a red dress for a long time. Xinyu touched the clothes. Under the contrast of the fiery red clothes, her skin looked even fairer. Your Majesty seems to like this dress very much. Can I wear it for you tonight? Chapter 140. The young man's voice was very soft, but there was a hidden hook in his voice, which aroused the beautiful thoughts in his heart little by little. Shang Junlin's throat moved violently. You have to keep your word. The palace servants lowered their heads and wished they were pillars. Xinyu let go of the red dress and turned to look at the other clothes. The rest of the clothes were light in color, which was in line with Xinyu's usual dressing style. In addition to the clothes in the hands of the palace servants, there were some that were not yet completed. Xinyu was the only one in the harem, and Shang Junlin had ordered that all the good clothes should be given to Xinyu first. Why would Your Majesty want them to make a red dress? Xinyu usually didn't wear this color, and it was not suitable for him to wear red in the palace due to his noble status. The red dress you wore last time was very beautiful. On the night of their first time, Shin Yu also wore red and bloomed slowly in front of him. Shin Yu that night was so beautiful that he couldn't take his eyes off him. Shin Yu did what he said. That night, he changed into the red dress and appeared in front of Shang Junlin. Shin Yu's body had grown a little, and his facial features were more beautiful. Under the contrast of the red dress, he showed a kind of burning beauty. "Your Majesty, do I look good?" Shin Yu approached slowly. From the moment Shin Yu came out in the red dress, Shang Junlin's eyes never moved away from him. His eyes were burning. If the eyes could turn into something tangible, Shin Yu felt that he would be ignited. "Very beautiful." Shang Junlin's voice was low and hoarse, with a strong sense of desire. Unlike last time, Shin Yu was dressed neatly today. His long hair was tied behind his head with a hairband of the same color. The red dress wrapped him tightly, not revealing anything, but it was more attractive. Shin Yu walked towards Shang Junlin. Before she could get close, she was pulled into Shang Junlin's arms. "No matter what Yu wears, no one can compare to her in my heart." Feeling the change in the man's body, Shin Yu's eyes flashed with a trace of ridicule. "Your Majesty, no matter how nice your words are, we can only watch tonight." Shang Junlin grabbed his wrist and reached into his wide sleeve. 10 days have passed. Shin Yu pressed the man's hand in his sleeve and glanced at him. "Your Majesty, have you forgotten what happened during the day? It was less than 10 days ago." "You." Shang Junlin sucked on her earlobe and ground it with his teeth. The numbness spread from her earlobes, and her Shin Yu trembled. The hand on the man's shoulder unconsciously tightened. A few more wrinkles appeared on the flat black dragon robe. Shin Yu was imprisoned in Shang Junlin's arms and could not escape. She could only let the man kiss her face, lips, neck, all the way down. The red petals unfolded, revealing the white snow inside. Soon, red plum blossoms bloomed on the snow. Shin Yu raised her head high, and her neck drew a beautiful arc. The red string slid down, and her long black hair spread out on the bed. A few strands fell in front of her chest and mixed with the man's hair, making it impossible to tell them apart. Half of her red dress fell on the bed, and the other half fell on the ground. The candlelight was bright, and she could vaguely see a figure moving. Occasionally, she could hear a few suppressed groans. The red candle was lit all night. When Shin Yu woke up the next day, his whole body was in pain. He sat up and didn't know where he pulled. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Shang Junlin lifted the bed curtain and saw Shin Yu sitting up slowly. He quickly reached out to help him. "Why don't you sleep a little longer? What time is it?" Shin Yu slowly sat up with Shang Junlin's help. "It's not noon yet." Compared to the previous times, Shin Yu woke up early this time. Shang Junlin brought the honey water and fed it to Shin Yu. Shin Yu felt even more uncomfortable and ordered Shang Junlin, "Your Majesty, come here and lean on me." Shang Junlin sat on the bed and took Shin Yu into his arms. He put his hand on Shin Yu's waist and massaged it. "Are you still uncomfortable? What do you think, Your Majesty?" Shin Yu asked angrily. Last night, he asked Shang Junlin to stop several times. He scolded and cried, but Shang Junlin didn't stop. Instead, he used more force. As long as Shin Yu made a sound, Shang Junlin would become more agitated. Shin Yu had no choice but to try not to make a sound. "You, where do you feel uncomfortable? I'll give you a massage." Shin Yu lay on Shang Junlin's body and let him massage him. It had to be said that Shang Junlin was very talented in this aspect. After the massage, Shin Yu's body was obviously less sore. After the discomfort in his body was relieved, Shin Yu got up from the bed. When he was awake, he didn't like to lie on the bed. Other than on the bed, Shang Junlin would usually do whatever Shin Yu wanted to do. Shin Yu changed his clothes. He was still wearing light blue today. Shang Junlin took the red clothes. He asked Mu Shi, but Mu Shi said she didn't see it. Thinking of the marks left on the red clothes, Shin Yu felt that it was good that Mu Shi didn't know. It would be best if Shang Junlin threw the red clothes away. He didn't want to wear red clothes in the short term. News from Subei kept coming back. Shin Yu also knew that Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu were disguised as businessmen and were looking for a breakthrough in another way. Coincidentally, Yanjing also sent back news. He had been doing business for many years and had his own connections. Although the relationship between Dahuan and the Northern Desert was tense, he didn't receive much trouble when he arrived in the Northern Desert because he had prepared well in advance. On the contrary, the goods he brought were very popular. The people of the Northern Desert had different habits from the people of Dahuan. They were nomads who lived on the grassland all year round. Their clothing and living habits were very different from those of Dahuan. However, this didn't prevent the women of the Northern Desert from liking the clothes of Dahuan. The goods Yanjing brought were popular with the women of all families in the capital, not to mention the Northern Desert, which had always been inferior to Dahuan in this aspect. Because most of the goods he sold were women's products, which were useless in the eyes of many men of the Northern Desert. Therefore, they didn't guard against him. Yanjing also gradually got in touch with noble ladies from the Northern Desert from the beginning. He even got in touch with the women of the royal family under the recommendation of these noble ladies. He got closer to these people while quietly investigating the movements of the Northern Desert. Is Boss Yan going back to Dahuan? At night, Yanjing was invited by a noble lady to a banquet hosted by the nobles of the Northern Desert. Yanjing took a sip of wine and said helplessly, "As you can see, my goods are almost sold out. I have to go back to restock. The things in Dahuan are so beautiful. It would be great if I could go and see them." The woman who spoke was wearing an exquisite hairpin. Her lips were also very beautiful. She wore the lipstick she bought from Yanjing. "I wanted to. Before I met Boss Yan, I never knew that lipstick could come in so many colors. There are even lipsticks that are specially used for cleansing and washing my hands. Now I smell good every day. I like the smell. Do the women of Dahuan have these things when they are born?" "That's not the case," Yanjing smiled. "These are all new products from the capital and have only been popular in Dahuan for a few days. I was lucky to be able to get the goods to sell in the Northern Desert. Other than in the hands of that person, these goods can't be imported anywhere else. This is also why I have to make a trip back." "So you're saying that not everyone in the Great Huan Kingdom can use these items?" The noble ladies looked at each other, their voices full of excitement. "Of course. I can guarantee that except for me, you can't buy these anywhere else. Will Boss Yan bring different goods the next time he comes? I heard that the women of Dahuan like to decorate their nails beautifully. Can Boss Yan also bring some nail decorations next time?" The other women followed and mentioned many things they wanted. Yanjing agreed to them one by one. He pretended to ask casually, "Many of the goods you mentioned are commonly used in Dahuan. Hasn't anyone come to sell them before?" "Yes, they have. Those people are not like Boss Yan. They only care about us. We can't use the things they bring." Yan Zhang's eyes flickered. "What do they usually sell?" According to the news from Subei, at the beginning, the people from the Northern Desert saw that the negotiator was a woman and laughed at her. In the end, Fang Jai shut them up with just a few words. Later on, she was even more skillful and forced the other party to retreat. Shang Junlin stroked Shin Yu's hair. Thanks to a Yu's suggestion, Dahuan has gained another powerful member. Chapter 141. Feng Jiayi's performance not only shocked the people of the northern desert, but also shocked the officials who came with her. They never knew that the second ranker of the banquet was so powerful. Now they could understand why His Majesty made an exception to allow women to become officials. With Feng Jiayi's fighting ability, they couldn't even defeat a few of them. Didn't they see how the northern desert people who came to show off their strength turned pale in the end? Fortunately, Feng Jiayi was on their side. This was the first thought in everyone's mind. After the negotiation, Feng Jiayi found that the attitude of the officials who came with her changed when they interacted with her. After thinking for a while, she could guess the reason for the change. He must have been frightened by her performance today. Feng Jiayi didn't care what these people thought. She just needed to do her own thing. The group of people returned to Subei with the supplies and were warmly welcomed by the people. This lady is really powerful. She got the supplies back without using a single soldier. 2 days ago, Subei was under martial law. I wondered if there was going to be a war again. Me too. But I'm not afraid of war. It's only after His Majesty defeated the northern desert people that we can live a peaceful life. If there's a war again, I'll be the first to rush up. I don't think there will be any more wars. When that female official first came, I was curious. Is there no man in Dahuan? Why did they send a woman over? Now I understand. Even if it's a woman, she's not inferior to the other officials. I heard a lot of news from the people who came to help. It turns out that the court now allows women to become officials. At first, I didn't understand. Now it seems that His Majesty is far-sighted. So what if it's a woman? She can still achieve great things. Feng Jiayi's action changed many people's views on women. In the Subei government, Feng Jiayi, as the person who contributed the most, reported the operation. Whether it was the process or the result, it was greatly beyond their expectations. Originally, the Subei army was ready at the border. If the negotiations didn't go well, they would directly attack. But during the negotiation, the northern desert people were suppressed by them. No, to be precise, they were suppressed by Feng Jiayi alone. Feng Jiayi not only got the supplies back, but also compensation. Before they left, they thought that if they could get their supplies back, it would be considered a success. Who would have thought that in addition to the original supplies, they would also receive a lot of compensation? Until now, these people still felt a little dazed. I didn't even dare to think about this result. Looking at the compensation that was moved back, a younger official said. That wasn't the case the last time. The last time I went with a few lords, the other party was so arrogant. Unlike this time, they don't even dare to speak loudly. The other officials who had participated in both cases nodded in agreement. They were too shocked. She was a woman, and she was not as tall as the northern desert people. She was not as strong as them, but her aura was enough to suppress them. When she opened her mouth, they could not even raise their heads. They were thinking about how to help her and how to console her if she failed. But what happened? In the end, they watched as Feng Jiayi's words became weaker and weaker. In the end, he agreed to everything she said. In fact, not only the northern desert people, but they were also dumbfounded. You did well, Feng Jun said as he looked at the woman who was standing upright. She was his daughter, an official of the Great Huan dynasty, and his pride. So what if he, Feng Jun, only had one daughter in his life? His daughter was not worse than anyone else. This is what this official should do. Feng Jiayi was neither servile nor overbearing. How did you think of getting the other party to compensate? Feng Jiayi did not mention this matter to Feng Jun from beginning to end. At first, this official was not sure if I could do it. Later, when I met with the other party, I realized that it was not as difficult as I imagined. Since the other party was willing to admit their mistakes, they naturally had to take responsibility for their wrongdoings. So you made the other party pay a heart-wrenching amount of compensation. The officials who heard the conversation were in a daze. Well done. Fong Jun patted Fong Jie on the shoulder. Our Dahuan officials should be like this. The others came back to their senses and nodded. That's right, they had Dahuan behind them. No matter what, they could not tarnish Dahuan's reputation. Alright, thank you for your hard work on this trip. This official has already booked a banquet at the largest restaurant in Subei to welcome everyone. Official Fong's words were met with unanimous approval. The group of people changed out of their official robes and arrived at the restaurant in a grandiose manner. Fong Jie was clustered in the center. Now, everyone did not care about the difference between men and women. Their admiration for Fong Jie made them temporarily put aside their gender concerns. So what if she was a woman? They only knew that Fong Jie had made a great contribution this time. Fong Jie picked up the wine cup and drank it in one gulp. When she put down the cup, there were a few more people around her. Darren, let us toast you. Do you have something to say to me? Fong Jie saw their sparkling eyes and took the initiative to ask. Yes, one of them mustered up the courage and looked straight into Fong Jie's eyes. We want to tell Darren that we admire Darren very much. Yes, yes. The others nodded vigorously. Fong Jie nodded. Also, we were not able to see the negotiation this time. Could Darren tell us what happened at that time? This time, not only them, but the people in the other seats also pricked up their ears. Even the people who went with them looked over curiously. Fong Jie looked at them one by one, and finally looked at Fong Jun. Fong Jun nodded at her. Fong Jie stood up. At that time, it was like this, the hall quieted down, and only Fong Jie's voice echoed. Following her description, they seemed to have returned to the scene of the negotiation once again. They saw the aggressive Northern Desert people at the beginning, they saw the Northern Desert people's momentum gradually weaken under Fong Jie's words, they saw Fong Jie arguing with the group of scholars. When they reappeared, they realized that the negotiation was far from as easy as they had imagined. The Northern Desert people were aggressive, and there were countless hidden traps behind every word. If they were not careful, they would fall into the trap and be doomed eternally. But Fong Jie was calm from the beginning to the end. She used offense as defense and was not afraid of any trap. She forced the Northern Desert people to retreat and defend themselves. Because of this, Fong Jie took the initiative little by little. They could not help but ask themselves, if they were present at that time, would they be able to do what Fong Jie did? No. This victory belonged to Fong Jie. No one could replace her. Miss Fong is very talented in this area. After listening to the entire process of the negotiation, Shin Yu sighed. Your Majesty can't let her talent be buried. Ayu, what do you think about letting her enter Honglu Temple? Honglu Temple was an organization in Dahuan that was responsible for foreign affairs. The officials there had relatively little involvement with the imperial court and were mainly responsible for connecting with other countries. Does Your Majesty still want her to stay in Subei? Staying in Subei was to accumulate experience. If she went to Honglu Temple, it would not make much difference whether she stayed in Subei or not. Let's wait for the matter in Subei to end first. If we really catch the Northern Desert people hiding in Subei, it will be good for Fong Jie to stay there. Shin Yu instantly understood Shang Junlin's idea. When they caught the Northern Desert people hiding in Subei, they would definitely connect with the Northern Desert. No matter what, the Northern Desert had to give Dahuan an explanation. If Fong Jie stayed there, based on the success of this negotiation, she would definitely be arranged to deal with this matter when the time came. Your Majesty is very thoughtful. With this premise, if she enters Honglu Temple again, those officials will have nothing to say. They wanted to stop her, but she had really made a great contribution. Even if they did not want to admit it, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. Shang Junlin was reviewing the memorials. Shen Yu was sitting beside him, bored. He casually flipped open one of the memorials that hadn't been reviewed and made a sound of surprise. "What's wrong?" Shang Junlin looked up. "Your Majesty said before that you want to set up an examination different from the imperial examination to select people who can enter the Ministry of Works. How is it going?" Originally, the Ministry of Rights was already preparing for it to be held this autumn. However, too many things happened this year, so the scale was reduced. It will only be held in the capital. Some people will be selected to enter the Ministry of Works and see if there is anything that can be improved. Shang Junlin took the memorials from Shen Yu's hands and found that it talked about this matter. The memorials were written by the Minister of Works, asking for the specific date of the examination. Shen Yu only remembered this when he saw it. There were 3 dates initially, which were September, October, and November. Now that September had passed, they could only choose October or November. If it's set in October, will there be enough time? If the scale is smaller, there's still time. This matter has already been leaked to the public. The necessary preparations should be almost done. Since ancient times, no dynasty had done such a thing. The imperial examination was to select talents to enter the imperial court as officials. However, this examination was different. It was equivalent to giving an officially recognized title. It didn't have any real power. Other than entering the Ministry of Works or a new department that had little to do with the imperial court in the future, it had no other use. Because of this, the focus of this examination wasn't on education, but a certain skill. As long as you had a skill, you could participate in the examination. After passing the examination, you could choose whether to enter the Ministry of Works or not. Then let's do it earlier. I think the Minister of Works is almost asking Your Majesty to send more people to him. Shen Yu had seen the Minister of Works pass the memorials several times and felt that the Ministry of Works didn't have enough people. Now that the Ministry of Works had money and technology, the Minister of Works had finally found an opportunity. He wouldn't give up until he made some achievements. Okay, then let's set the date at the end of October. Shang Junlin wrote a comment on the memorials. Shen Yu flipped through a few more memorials. After a few glances, he put them back uninterestedly. He picked up the unfinished storybooks and continued reading. Halfway through, Shen Yu thought of something and poked Shang Junlin's arm. The man raised his head and looked at him in confusion. Your Majesty, do you still remember the storybooks we read the first time we left the palace? Why haven't I seen anything similar after that? Shen Yu supported his chin with one hand. His eyes were full of confusion. The storybooks he read were all popular in the capital. It didn't make sense that there wasn't a single one. Yu is talking about the one that was written based on us. Shen Yu nodded. Yu wants to read it. Shang Junlin had a subtle expression on his face. Your Majesty, don't you think it's quite interesting? The literary talent is also not bad. Maybe we can learn something useful from it. Shen Yu's voice became lower and lower. This was because he saw Shang Junlin take out a few books from a hidden compartment and put them in front of him one by one. I didn't know that Yu would be interested in this. Chapter 142. So, it's not that they don't exist, but that they have all been hidden by Your Majesty. Shen Yu flipped open one of the books. He had an impression of this book. It was the one he saw outside the palace. Shen Yu had thought that these books were thrown away by Shang Junlin or left in the house outside the palace. He did not expect them to be so close to him. He was speechless for a moment. I thought you wouldn't want to see them. Shang Junlin stopped looking at the booklets and picked up one of the books. Why would Your Majesty think so? Shin Yu looked away from the book and turned to Shang Junlin, a trace of curiosity flashing in his eyes. Shang Junlin did not answer his question. Instead, he said, if you don't mind, I won't keep them for you in the future. Shin Yu stared at Shang Junlin without blinking. He looked at the scarlet color that crept up from his neck to his cheeks. Shin Yu smiled. Did your majesty really keep them for me because you were worried that I would not be able to accept them? After the last time, I thought that your majesty would not allow them to continue writing. Shang Junlin looked away under Shin Yu's burning gaze. Why would you think so? I have this intuition. Shin Yu's intuition was right. Shang Junlin would not allow others to write about him and Shin Yu, especially if the writing was so erotic and explicit. Therefore, after that day, Shang Junlin found the author through the hidden dragon guards. After a friendly conversation, Shang Junlin did not take back the author's right to write the books. Instead, he restricted the content. The books that were released to the public could not be as explicit as before, and there could not be a third person in between the two of them. As for the original books with explicit descriptions, Shang Junlin bought them at a high price. That person was quite bold. Seeing that he had not angered the nobleman, he wrote another book, but he did not distribute it to the public. Instead, he gave it to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin accepted it silently. This was equivalent to tacit approval. That person then wrote another edition while writing the normal edition. Without exception, these books were all kept by Shang Junlin. Shin Yu continued to flip through these books. The content was the same as before. He felt a little strange. According to Shang Junlin's temperament, he shouldn't have allowed this kind of book to be widely circulated. Shin Yu didn't know, but in a sense, he was right. Shang Junlin wouldn't allow such a book to spread. A Yu's intuition is wrong, Shang Junlin retorted without changing his expression. How can I be such a narrow-minded person? Shin Yu looked at the book and then glanced at Shang Junlin. He didn't say whether he believed it or not. He didn't intend to argue with Shang Junlin on this matter. With the new novel, Shin Yu didn't bother Shang Junlin anymore. He was quite interested in the follow-up of the novel. Although the novel was based on him and Shang Junlin, the content was different. The person who wrote the novel was very skillful. The two protagonists were described very vividly. No wonder it was so popular. Shin Yu half leaned on the soft couch and slightly lowered his head. A few strands of hair fell from his cheeks and disappeared into his light-colored clothes. His white and slender fingers pressed on the pages of the book. He was more beautiful than any jade Shang Junlin had ever seen. Putting down the booklet in his hand, Shang Junlin walked over and held Shin Yu's hand. Shin Yu was interrupted. He raised his head in confusion. Your Majesty. Shang Junlin lifted Shin Yu's chin and leaned over to kiss him. This situation is just right. Shin Yu was stunned for a moment, but he didn't refuse the kiss. Shang Junlin's kiss was very gentle at first. After receiving Shin Yu's response, he suddenly increased the intensity of his kiss. Shin Yu snorted. His hand that was pressed against Shang Junlin's chest turned into a push. His other hand was still under Shang Junlin's palm. The hot temperature began to spread from the place where they touched. After the kiss, Shang Junlin sat on the soft couch and held Shin Yu in his arms. Shin Yu's breath was unstable. He leaned on Shang Junlin's shoulder and panted slightly. Why did your Majesty suddenly kiss me? Didn't you say that he wanted to use the content of the novel as a reference? Shang Junlin picked up the novel that Shin Yu crumpled and put it in front of Shin Yu. Just in time. We can try it. Shin Yu looked down and hurriedly looked away. Reading by himself and being held in someone's arms were two completely different levels of stimulation. Do you want to try it? I will only do what is in the novel. Shang Junlin leaned close to Shen Yu's ear and said in a coaxing tone, You can stop it at any time. Shen Yu was imprisoned in Shang Junlin's arms. His fragile neck was also in Shang Junlin's hands. He trembled with Shang Junlin's movements. The familiar feeling aroused the heat in his body. Your Majesty, you have to keep your word. It turned out that sometimes Shang Junlin's words couldn't be trusted. Shen Yu lay on the soft couch. Under the influence of the aftertaste, his eyes were a little unfocused. Shang Junlin was like a hungry wolf. After biting a piece of meat, he refused to let go. I'll carry you to wash up. Shang Junlin strode in with a satisfied face. Shen Yu turned his neck with difficulty. He didn't want to speak. He was sweating all over. His clothes were sticking to his body. For someone who loved cleanliness, this wasn't a good experience. Shang Junlin picked him up and said, Didn't you say that you want to try it? Why are you not willing now? I'll keep my word this time. It's fine if you don't want to wash up. Shang Junlin pretended to carry Shen Yu to the bed. Shen Yu's eyes widened. He angrily bumped Shang Junlin and said, I'm going to wash up. Shang Junlin had a strange obsession in certain aspects. Shen Yu resisted several times, but it only made things worse for him. In the end, he simply couldn't be bothered. Shen Yu used to be in a state of drowsiness or semi-drowsiness most of the time. It was very rare for him to be awake like today. Shen Yu didn't breathe a sigh of relief until he was put into the bathtub. Shen Yu's fatigue was effectively relieved under the hot water. He slowly breathed a sigh of relief. He leaned against the edge of the bathtub and half closed his eyes. Suddenly, Shen Yu opened his eyes and asked, What is your Majesty doing? Shang Junlin held Shen Yu's shoulder with one hand and dipped the other into the water. If you don't clean up, you'll get sick. Shen Yu's fingers on the edge of the bathtub tightened. The redness on his skin deepened. This feeling was too strange. Ripples appeared on the surface of the water. Finally, after the bath, Shen Yu was carried out. His whole body was soft. His porcelain-like skin was dyed light pink. It was unknown whether it was soaked in the hot water or for some other reason. After fooling around for a day, Shang Junlin's official business was delayed. He didn't want to be too far away from Shen Yu, so he didn't put Shen Yu on the bed. Instead, he carried him back to the soft couch. After a while, the dirty things on the soft couch were taken away by the palace servants and replaced with clean ones. Shen Yu was held in his arms and read the booklets with him. During this period, they ordered a meal. It was all good food. After the meal, Shen Yu was lazy and didn't want to move. Shang Junlin put away the booklets. It just so happened that Shen Yu didn't want to see them for a while. The sky gradually darkened. Shen Yu yawned. Shang Junlin put down the booklets in his hands and asked, Are you sleepy? A little. At night, some people were falling asleep, while others were just starting to get busy. Subei. He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing changed into luxurious clothes. Under the guidance of the servants, they walked into a seemingly inconspicuous house. They used their new identities to travel in Subei for many days. Finally, they found an opportunity to establish a relationship with a local businessman. He Qingyu was born in an aristocratic family and had always been cultivated as the family's heir. The He family had a lot of businesses outside. As the next family head, he was no stranger to the business world. Jiang Huiqing had even asked him if his family was in the business because of how skillful he was at it. He Qingyu laughed and said, If my family was in the business world, I wouldn't be here today. Jiang Huiqing thought about it and felt that it was true. He quickly apologized. Jiang Huiqing couldn't help but suspect that He Qingyu was really a businessman. Seeing how He Qingyu was acting like he was a rich businessman, Jiang Huiqing couldn't help but wonder if He Qingyu was really a businessman. A businessman's behavior was much better than that of a scholar. While his thoughts were running wild, the two walked through the corridor and arrived at the main hall. Jiang Huiqing quickly collected his thoughts and looked around without leaving a trace. The house looked ordinary from the outside, but after entering, he discovered that it was a completely different world inside. There were fake mountains, flowing water, and winding corridors. Everything was unique. "Brother Gu, you're finally here. Come in quickly." Both of them used fake names. He Qingyu pretended to be the older brother and had all the right to speak. Jiang Huiqing was the younger brother who followed the older brother out to gain experience. After entering the inner hall, the sound of music and the smell of wine assaulted the two of them. The lights were brightly lit, and the atmosphere was blissful. Dancers dressed in thin clothes danced gracefully to the music, the bells on their bodies jingling as they danced. He Qingyu led Jiang Huiqing to a person he had befriended recently. "I'm late. I'm willing to drink a cup as punishment." After saying this, he boldly picked up a cup filled with wine and drank it in one gulp. Seeing his forthright attitude, the person laughed and patted He Qingyu's shoulder. "Do you know what I like about you the most? It's the strength in your bones. This is a banquet for pleasure, so there's nothing to be late about. Come, let me introduce you to a few of my best friends. If you want to do business in Subei in the future, you'll have to rely on them." He Qingyu pretended to be excited. "Thank you, Boss Sun." Boss Sun introduced He Qingyu to a circle of people. He Qingyu memorized the appearance and basic information of these people. With a few words, he made the other party lower their attitude and start talking. Jiang Huiqing pretended to be inexperienced and looked around curiously. Because He Qingyu wanted to talk about business, he sent him to the side to play. The banquet lasted until midnight. When it ended, Boss Sun came over with two beautiful dancers. He looked like an experienced person. "When you're outside, you must have one or two close friends by your side. If Boss Gu doesn't mind, you can bring these two back." Boss Sun narrowed his eyes and looked at the two for a while. Then, he lowered his voice. "These two are a pair of twins. The taste is not ordinary. They'll be perfect to serve Boss Gu." He Qingyu didn't refuse and left with the two women. After returning, Jiang Huiqing was about to say something when he saw He Qingyu holding his forehead and shaking his body. Without thinking, Jiang Huiqing supported He Qingyu before the two women hit him. "What's wrong? Maybe I drank too much. Help me back to my room to lie down." Jiang Huiqing looked at He Qingyu, whose eyes were not clear, and looked at the two women awkwardly. "What about these two? Let them rest in the room in the south for the night. I have a terrible headache. We'll talk about the rest tomorrow." Jiang Huiqing hurriedly handed the two women to the servant and then helped He Qingyu back to his room. "Do you need me to bring a bowl of hangover soup?" Jiang Huiqing helped him to the bed and sat down. He turned around and was about to leave when his wrist was grabbed. "No need." He Qingyu's voice was not drunk at all. Jiang Huiqing turned around and saw He Qingyu looking at him with a smile. "I really thought you were drunk." Jiang Huiqing sighed in relief and sat down on a chair. "How can I fool those two dancers if I don't pretend to be drunk? Were those two sent to keep an eye on us?" Jiang Huiqing asked thoughtfully. "We just entered this circle. It's normal for them to be worried and send someone to keep an eye on us. I'm not sure if there's anything wrong with those two, but it's never wrong to be cautious," He Qingyu said. "That's true. But won't those people be suspicious if we just let them stay in the fu and do nothing? Do we have to pretend to be drunk every day?" Jiang Huiqing frowned slightly. Since he said the word serve, it was obvious what those two were sent to do. No need. He chuckled. It's just that in the future, I'll have to trouble you to put on a show with me. What's the show? Jiang Huiqing was curious. You just have to throw a tantrum at me occasionally, especially in front of those two, He said with a smile. That's it. You don't have to do anything else. Jiang Huiqing was full of questions. He no need. Just do everything else as usual. Chapter 143. Jiang Huiqing didn't know why, but he still agreed. I found something strange today. These dancers aren't all from Dahuan. Since He wasn't drunk, Jiang Huiqing started to talk about business. While He was talking with the bosses, Jiang Huiqing wasn't idle either. He looked like he was wandering around out of curiosity, but he was actually observing the entire banquet. And the utensils at the banquet. Many of them aren't from Dahuan. They're closer to what the northern desert people use. I didn't find anything wrong with the merchants who attended the banquet. We can't rush this. They're still suspicious of us, so they can't directly show too many things that are wrong. We can only be considered part of the inner circle after we pass their test. Some things had to be done slowly. They couldn't be rushed. There were 2 more women in the residence. It didn't seem any different from before, except that Jiang Huiqing had to throw a tantrum at He when the 2 were around. Every time the 2 women tried to get close to He, they were interrupted. After a few times, they vaguely sensed something and stopped approaching them. He still went out to attend the banquets of Boss Sun and the others from time to time. Jiang Huiqing didn't need to deal with these people, so he secretly observed. After returning, the 2 locked themselves in the room to check the clues they found. Time passed in the blink of an eye. After receiving Shang Junlin's accurate reply, the Ministry of Works started to prepare for the examination. Because this examination was only to select people to enter the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights didn't participate much. The specific process has been temporarily confirmed. I'll go to the palace to report to His Majesty. If there are no other changes, we can start preparing for the examination. The Minister of Works gathered everyone in the Ministry of Works and talked about this matter. This was a big deal for the Ministry of Works. It was also a big deal for the common people. Have you heard about what happened recently? This kind of examination is unheard of. You can enter the Ministry of Works without taking the imperial exam, as long as you have a skill. I want to give it a try. This news has been around for a long time, right? Is it accurate this time? It's been reported in the People's newspaper, so it must be accurate. But the date hasn't been set yet. They only said to let interested people prepare first. Do you want to give it a try? The newspaper said that as long as you know a skill, you can go. I only know how to do carpentry. I don't know if I can do it. For a time, there was a lot of discussion among the people about this examination. The People's newspaper wrote it very clearly. Without any rumors, the people accepted this examination very well. Many people had already started to think about which skills they could use. During the morning court session, the Minister of Works brought up the matter of the examination. Because this matter would not affect the power of the imperial court, there were not many people who objected. The time was set. After the court session, the ministers caught up with the Minister of Works. Has the minister been busy with this matter all this time? The Minister of Works nodded. Recently, we've been busy with the construction of roads and buildings, so we're really short on manpower. If any of you have subordinates that you can borrow, you can send them to the Ministry of Works. The person who caught up said in an embarrassed tone, everyone has been busy recently. I see. The Minister of Works lost his enthusiasm at a speed visible to the naked eye. Forget it, I'll go and talk to the Minister of Rights about the assessment. They're more experienced. The Minister of Works did not care about their urging him to stay and strode away. He did not lie. He had originally planned to talk to the Minister of Rights about the assessment. If he had not been stopped by these people, he might have already caught up with the Minister of Rights. Compared to the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights had more experience in this area. If they know that Her Majesty is planning to establish a new power that is independent of the imperial court, they definitely won't let go so easily. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin sat at a stone table under a big tree. There were snacks and tea on the table, all of which were to Shen Yu's taste. This matter, we'll talk about it after the results of the Ministry of Works assessment are out. Shang Junlin slowly sipped his tea. Implementing it only in the Ministry of Works and implementing it in the entire Dahuan were two different concepts. There were more and more problems to consider. Shen Yu was clear about this point. He believed that Shang Junlin would be able to handle this matter well. There were so many officials in the imperial court, and they were not paid for nothing. Your Majesty, I have a bookstore under my name. They have researched a new printing method. If it can be implemented in Dahuan, it will be more convenient than the original method. It will also not be like the original method, where it can only be abandoned after it's used up. This method is called movable type printing. This was also the technology that Shen Qingran had provided to the King of Yu in his previous life. Shen Yu had thought of this when he was writing a newspaper in the imperial court. However, he had not come into contact with this technology in his previous life, so he could only extract the main points from the content in his memory. Therefore, he did not directly tell Shang Junlin. He had sorted out the method and handed it to his bookstore. 2 days ago, news came from outside the palace that the effect he wanted was achieved. Shen Yu then mentioned it in front of Shang Junlin. Otherwise, I will be angry. How could I bear to do that? He could not wait to dote on him. How is Subei? When will official Fong come back? Shen Yu and Shang Junlin had been reading memorials for the past few days. They had seen a lot of memorials that talked about another position in the cabinet. Entering the cabinet was the dream of almost all civil officials. It represented not only power, but also a kind of recognition. There was always a kind of obsession in the hearts of civil officials. After all, who did not want to do something big and leave their name in history? I also hope that he can come back soon. For the vacant cabinet position, the courtiers are about to fight. However, it was not that easy to find the northern desert people who had been lurking in Subei for many years. According to the clues given by Yaoji, Fong Jun sent people to conduct a strict search in the main city of Subei and the surrounding small towns. However, they still could not find the house that Yaoji mentioned. It was as if it had disappeared into thin air. Does official Fong really think that woman's words can be trusted? In the study, someone raised a doubt. It was not that they wanted to suspect anything, but after so many days of searching, they really could not find any clues. What if this matter was a lie from the beginning? Then everything would make sense. Why could they not find the house even after turning the main city upside down? Because there was no such house from the beginning to the end. Whether it is trustworthy or not, this matter needs to be taken seriously. They were able to lurk in Subei for so many years without being discovered by anyone. It is enough to show that they can integrate well into Subei. It is normal that we can't find them easily, Fong Jun said lightly. You are right, official Fong. I have misunderstood. Don't say such things again in the future. Yes. Fong Jun did not doubt Yaoji's words. However, according to the news that the merchant who came back from the northern desert asked the hidden dragon guards to bring back to him, Yaoji's words were very credible. They could not find any useful clues for the time being. They could only hope that He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing could find some clues. Recently, Jiang Huiqing felt that something was not right. Especially every time he went to a banquet with He Qingyu, those people looked at him. Although they were very subtle, he could feel that there was something else behind it. Also, in the residence, the two women did not go near them anymore. He sat on one side, bored. On the other side, Qingyu was talking business with Boss Sunday. If this business could be done, they would really enter the business circle of Subei. I didn't know that you were in that kind of relationship before. Did the two women I sent to you cause you trouble? After the business discussion, Boss Sun took the initiative to talk about the two dancers. I threw a tantrum, but it has been dealt with. Qingyu raised his wine cup and covered the smile on his face. Look at how I handled it. If it is inconvenient for you, you can just tell me directly. How about this? I will take the initiative to give you 10% of the profits for this cooperation as an apology for what happened before. Boss Sun looked guilty. I didn't say it. It is not your fault. Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing's movements were immediately reported to the palace through the hidden dragon guards. Their plan is very successful. I think they will find the clues of the people from the northern desert earlier than Fang Jun. Shang Junlin put down the secret letter and said. Shen Yu's attention could not help but fall on another matter. Is the top scholar deliberately tricking Huiqing? At first glance, they don't look like brothers. It turns out that this brother is not the other brother. Boss Sun suddenly realized. My sister and I have pretended to accidentally bump into their interactions many times, but we really didn't find anything wrong. I got it. You guys can leave first. After the twins left, a tall and sturdy man dressed differently from the Subei people appeared in the study. You guys have to move faster. The deadline is almost up. Mr. Sun smiled bitterly. Do you think I don't want to? You've seen the current situation in Subei. That new Lord Fang isn't as easy to fool as before. I know. The female official in their midst is also very powerful. Hasn't the Great Huan dynasty always looked down on women? How could they allow women to enter the court as officials? Most of the foreign men frowned. Mr. Sun had also heard about the negotiations. It was precisely because of the failure of this negotiation that the other side was so anxious. They had already made a deal once and then snatched a batch of supplies. Even if the incident in Subei happened and those officials were executed, they shouldn't be so anxious. They could temporarily lie dormant. However, those officials from the capital were not easy to deal with. They insisted on an explanation from the northern desert. After the first negotiation failed, they came for a second time. It was also because they underestimated the enemy that they were killed by a woman the second time. Our current emperor has never acted according to common sense. Who knows what he's thinking? It's said that the court has now allowed women to enter the court as officials. Thinking of this, Mr. Sun was upset. Their network of relations with the northern desert had been initially established during the time of the previous emperor. After more than 10 years of improvement, it was now very stable. However, at this time, there was a drought. What happened later was like a wild horse that was out of their control. I told you long ago not to look down on women, but those people didn't listen. This time, they're in big trouble. The strange race man sneered. They messed up such a big thing, and I have to clean up the mess for them. No one could have predicted this kind of thing. Mr. Sun tried to persuade him. Let's not talk about these idiots. In short, this matter can't be delayed any longer. Since you have a candidate, hurry and get it done. Those officials from the capital seem to be looking for us. Mr. Sun was startled. Could it be that they found something? Who knows if some idiot gave the game away? This Lord Fang is not easy to deal with. You have to be careful. A long night had many dreams. Mr. Sun also felt that this matter could not be delayed any longer. Without the twins in the Fu, Jiang Huiqing let out a sigh of relief. He finally didn't have to argue with Brother Qingyu over such a small matter. They probably can't wait any longer. In the courtyard, Qingyu sat opposite Jiang Huiqing. Tea was boiling on the small table between them. Steam rose in spirals. They seemed to be very anxious. Although I don't know the reason, this is undoubtedly extremely beneficial to us. When people were anxious, it was always easy to make mistakes or neglect some things. Their bait had been released little by little, waiting for the fish to take the bait. Huiqing is right. Through their actions these past few days, it's not hard to see that their suspicions towards us have already been reduced to the lowest. If the matter wasn't so urgent, they could have used a gentler method to slowly probe us instead of directly sending spies to our residence. If I'm not wrong, they should have come to our door in the next 2 days. Just as Qingyu had expected, Boss Sun came to visit him again in less than 2 days. This time, he brought a friend and asked Qingyu if he was interested in talking about a big business that was sure to be profitable. Qingyu did not directly agree, but deliberately hesitated for a while. This undoubtedly dispelled the last concerns in Mr. Sun's heart. It is not the first time that you and I have cooperated. You know my character. Just relax. If it was not a good job, I would not have specially called you. Mr. Sun, you are too serious. It's just that this business is too big. I don't have so much stock in my hands. I need some time to prepare. Will it delay you? Ha ha ha, you can rest assured. I don't have so much stock in my hands. They don't want so much all at once. They can trade in batches. You can trade as much as you have. After some discussion, Qingyu agreed. It seems that they are more anxious than we thought. Qingyu looked at the goods list left by Mr. Sunday. The light in his eyes was obscure and uncertain. Jiang Huiqing, they don't completely trust us. There is no big problem with the goods written on the list. However, this transaction proves that our efforts are not in vain. The direction is correct. Qingyu, originally, I thought that it would take a lot of effort to get in touch with them. I didn't expect Boss Sun to be one of them. We can't let anything go wrong with this deal. Boss Sun is a very cautious person. We need to let them let down their guard bit by bit and treat us as their own people. Only then can we get in touch with the most important thing. What they needed was precisely the most important things. Brother Qingyu, can you prepare such a large batch of goods in time? This time, it was not the same as the previous small transactions. This time, what the other party wanted to trade was equivalent to the entire heritage of a small aristocratic family. Don't worry. Since we have chosen this identity, we can naturally do everything that this identity can do. In order to prevent the news from leaking, only Fang Jun knew about Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing's progress in Subei. Only Fang Jun knew about their plan. As soon as they got in touch, Fang Jun received the news. Qingyu's plan was to bide his time and wait for the other party to reveal more of their trump cards before making a move. Fang Jun did not object. Instead, he secretly set up a large net through the information Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing sent over. This time, they were going to completely dig out this malignant tumor that had grown in Subei for many years. After telling Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing to be careful, Lord Fang asked Qingyu if he needed help. He had the same concerns as Jiang Huiqing. He was worried that Qingyu could not take out so many things. Qingyu refused. Just as he said, if he was not completely confident, he would not have chosen this identity. He had indeed done it and did not let the other party find anything amiss. So Qingyu's family is so rich. Shen Yu looked at the booklet Fang Jun sent back and sighed in his heart. The He family has been passed down for many years. It is not surprising that they have such a rich family background. In the capital, many aristocratic families can easily take out these things. Previously, the majority of the goods shipped to Subei were provided by aristocratic families. Before Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he knew that he should never underestimate aristocratic families. It was common for dynasties to change, but some aristocratic families were able to stand tall and not fall. The role they could play was immeasurable. No matter how dissatisfied Shang Junlin was with the aristocratic family's actions, he could not rashly make a move against them. The few times he made a move, he hit them with one blow. The aristocratic families did not have time to react, nor did he give them any chance to unite. "Didn't you say that he was going to take me to see the new printing technology?" Shang Junlin ordered someone to bring a carriage and took Shinyu out of the palace. They went to the shop they went to last time. Because the purpose this time was different, they did not go to the shop. Instead, they went directly to the backyard. Boss Yi already knew that they were coming and had prepared everything. Shang Junlin's eyes casually glanced at Boss Yi. When he saw that Boss Yi's body was tense, he frowned slightly. His memory was never wrong. Last time, when he felt that this person looked familiar, he asked the hidden dragon guards to investigate this person. The result was that there was no problem. Shinyu scratched Shang Junlin's palm. "Your Majesty, what's wrong?" Shang Junlin squeezed Shinyu's hand. "Nothing." After passing through the long corridor, the three of them came to the more secretive backyard. This was the place where the books were printed. Shang Junlin also saw the movable type printing technology that Shinyu mentioned for the first time. Shinyu felt the strength of the hand that was holding Shang Junlin's hand suddenly increase. He turned his head and looked at Shang Junlin. "Your Majesty. You always brings me big surprises." Shang Junlin's voice was hoarse. Chapter 145. Shinyu once talked to Shang Junlin about the difference between movable type printing and Dahuan's existing printing. Comparing the two, the former was far more practical than the latter. One of the reasons why aristocratic families could stand for so many years was because of their heritage, the knowledge accumulated over generations, and the rich variety of books. Although Dahuan had opened the imperial examination, the competitiveness of the students from poor families was far less than that of the aristocratic families. Part of the reason was that the students from poor families had less access to knowledge from the beginning than the aristocratic families. If an ordinary family wanted to cultivate a scholar, it was far from easy to imagine. The impact of the new printing would be huge. Unlike the previous printing where all the content was engraved on a board, if a word was wrong, the whole board would be scrapped. The new printing would carve each word separately. When printing different content, the words only needed to be rearranged, unlike the previous printing where only one piece could be engraved. Shang Junlin could foresee the huge impact of this printing. With this method, books could be printed on a large scale. In a short time, there may not be any changes, but after a long time, the gap between the aristocratic families and the poor families would be narrowed. Knowledge would no longer be monopolized by the aristocratic families. For the real rulers of Dahuan, it was extremely beneficial. For a moment, Shang Junlin forgot that Boss Yi felt something was wrong. His whole mind fell on the things in front of him. If this printing could be popularized on a large scale, the influence of the aristocratic families would become smaller and smaller. Boss Yi knew that the two came to see the printing, so he took the two inside and let the experienced people demonstrate. "This method is much more convenient than before," Boss Yi sighed. "The cost of printing a book in the past is simply incomparable to now. Yes, this way, the time, manpower, and material required are greatly reduced. In the same time, with this method, more books can be printed." Shang Junlin agreed. Shinyu curiously looked around. His understanding of this method was limited to what he heard from others. In his previous life, he didn't see how it worked. This was the first time he saw it. What do you think, Your Majesty? After walking around, the two returned to the front yard. Boss Yeet sensibly didn't disturb the two alone time, but went to the bookstore to work. With the new printing technology, the bookstore sold more kinds of books. Previously, because of the special letter paper, the bookstore had a good reputation among the scholars. This time, there were a variety of new books, and more customers came to patronize. Xinyu's favorite snacks were placed on the table. Xinyu picked up a piece and put it in her mouth. She slightly narrowed her eyes. It's really a pleasant surprise. Shang Junlin took a sip of tea to ease his mood. But we can't let the aristocratic families know about it for the time being. The aristocratic families were not in cahoots with each other, but if their interests were endangered, they would unite as quickly as possible and unite against the outside world. The aristocratic families had been entrenched in this land for a long time. If they were really angered, it would bring about a lot of unnecessary trouble. Moreover, if they knew that all of this was done by Xinyu, he was afraid that they would all target Xinyu. They might not dare to do too much because of him, but they definitely wouldn't let Xinyu go easy because of him. In any case, Shang Junlin wouldn't let Xinyu be exposed to danger. Is Your Majesty worried about the aristocratic family's counterattack? This matter really can't be rushed. After all, we have a trump card in our hands, so we can take it slowly. Xinyu understood Shang Junlin's concerns. I'm afraid that you will have to be wronged for the time being. I can't give you the credit for the new printing technology for the time being. Shang Junlin paused for a moment, and looked at Xinyu with a somewhat complicated expression. The aristocratic family's influence in the capital is too big. I can't risk exposing you under their eyes. He was very dissatisfied. If he could solve the hidden danger of the aristocratic families earlier, why would Xinyu be wronged now? His EU had obviously made such a big contribution, but because of these people, he could only be behind the scenes. Even if Your Majesty didn't say it, I would still ask Your Majesty to take me out. I got this method from somewhere else, and the one who really made the results was not me. If Your Majesty wants to reward, then reward these people. Shang Junlin held Xinyu's hand on the table. I will never let you be wronged. After returning to the palace, Shang Junlin immediately summoned the Prime Minister to the palace to discuss how to popularize the movable type printing technology. In the Imperial Study, Shang Junlin said, Your Majesty's people have recently developed a new printing technology. Meng Chang, give it to the Prime Minister. Eunuch Meng sorted out the files about the movable type printing technology and handed them to the Prime Minister. To be able to reach the position of Prime Minister and become Shang Junlin's confidant at the same time, the Prime Minister's knowledge and political acumen were top-notch. After reading the files, he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he digested the contents of the files for a while before saying, This method is really good for Dahuan. I know. What I am thinking about now is how to make the aristocratic families less resistant to it. Also, the relationship between Dahuan and Your Majesty cannot be revealed. The Prime Minister immediately understood that the Emperor did this to prevent Dahuan from becoming a target for the aristocratic families. The Prime Minister could see how sincere Shang Junlin was toward Xinyu. Because of this, he became more and more emotional. With Xinyu's ability, if he was in the imperial court, he would definitely be an extremely high official. It was a pity that he had an unreliable father. Shang Junlin called the Prime Minister to discuss the printing technology. In the end, the preliminary plan was to directly popularize it among the people. When the aristocratic families discovered it, the imperial court would intervene. As long as there was enough time in between, there would be a lot of room for manipulation. Subei. Under the unremitting efforts of Fang Jun and the others, they finally found some clues. He Qingyu and Boss Sun's friendship became deeper and deeper. After the successful completion of the first transaction, Boss Sun basically dispelled his suspicions towards He Qingyu. Gradually, he began to tell him more about the inside story and started to introduce him to some foreign businessmen. He Qingyu observed these people. Some of them were from the northern desert, and some were from other countries. So it's not just the northern desert people. At night, He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing gathered together as usual to talk about their discoveries. Most of the transactions between these people are normal goods. This Boss Sun is hiding a lot of secrets. He originally thought that Boss Sun was just an ordinary businessman. He didn't expect that the more he interacted with him, the more he realized that the power behind him was complicated. The scale of Boss Sun's power today is inseparable from the power behind him. It's like a tie that connects all the forces. After knowing that Boss Sun had a certain relationship with the northern desert people, Fang Jun sent people to carefully investigate the identity of this person. He was an ordinary businessman in Subei. Before the Sun family was handed over to him, it was far from its current scale. No useful information could be found about the history of this person's family. It seemed that he suddenly rose overnight. After finding a breakthrough, Fang Jun ordered people to follow Mr. Sun's lead and continue to investigate. Maybe they could find more useful information. Fang Jun called Yaoji and asked, "Have you heard of Boss Sun?" During this period of time, Yaoji had been investigating cases with the government. Her temperament had changed a lot. She was more determined and her eyes were also very different from before. Especially after Fang Jiayi's arrival, Fang Jiayi's confidence and calmness greatly shocked her, which also affected her personality change imperceptibly. Boss Sun. Yaoji thought about it carefully. She really pulled out such a person from her memory. I've seen him before. It was at a banquet. That Mr. Sun seemed to have a high status. Even Lord Ho at that time gave him some face. At that time, Lord Ho could be said to be the one holding up the sky in Subei. Even he had to give face to someone who was not a simple person. Think about it. Is there any more detailed information about this person? Boss Sun doesn't appear at every banquet. Whenever he appears, it's relatively mysterious. Lord Ho pays much more attention to those banquets than others. I'm just a dancer. Except for occasionally being ordered to stay in the hall for a while, I can't get in touch with these people at other times. After all, with her identity, it was already a surprise that Yaoji could give so much information. Who else have you seen? Can you describe them and ask someone to draw them down? Fang Jiayi suddenly asked. Yes. Fang Jun called in someone who was good at this. The two of them worked together and drew more than 10 portraits. Fang Jun immediately ordered people to check the details of these people. It was much easier to check these people. It didn't take long for the information about them to be sent to Fang Jun's desk. Fang Jun listed a series of common points through the results of the investigation. The hidden truth gradually surfaced, and only the last line that could connect everything was left. With Xin Yu's instructions, Boss Yi revealed the movable type printing under the pretext of cooperation. The cooperation was first proposed by Boss Yi. He looked for bookstores that were not involved with aristocratic families. After all, Xin Yu told him that this matter could not be known to the aristocratic families for the time being. Boss Yi was a very rational person. His position was very clear. He knew that if there was no Xin Yu, he would not be where he was now. Therefore, he did not object to Xin Yu's request, even if it was unreasonable to share the new printing technology unconditionally in the eyes of many people. Today, I invited you to come over because I want to talk to you about a business. I want to publish a book of basic literacy with you and sell it at the lowest price. When Boss Ye's voice fell, someone objected. Boss Ye wants to pull us to do charity together. It's not that we don't want to agree, but Boss Ye is also a bookstore. You know that our industry is far from being as profitable as it seems. The price of books is high because of the cost. I know that this is a bit difficult, but to show my sincerity, I am willing to share the new printing method with you. After listening to Boss Ye's introduction, the people present were stunned. This method is really wonderful. For a long time, someone spoke. They were all running bookstores for many years. They knew the drawbacks of the existing printing technology. Now all kinds of books were expensive. A large part of the reason was that the cost was too high. Whether it was printing or hand copying, it was not an easy task. But if there was the new printing technology mentioned by Boss Ye, many problems could be solved. Why is Boss Ye willing to tell us such a method? After the shock, some people were puzzled. Peers were also competitors. If this technology has been in the hands of Boss Ye, in a few years, Boss Ye's bookstore will be able to suppress them. Cooperation always needs to show some sincerity first, right? Boss Ye smiled faintly. This Ye thinks that this sincerity is enough. This Ye knows that the cooperation proposed by this Ye is too idealistic, but with the new printing technology, this matter is not so unbelievable. What do you think? Boss Ye is really. A person stood up and said, in this case, I am willing to cooperate with Boss Ye. Several other people looked at each other and no longer objected. It was not about other things, but the new printing method described by Boss Ye was enough to make people excited. After the matter was done, Boss Ye sent the news to the palace. Your Majesty wants to implement it first among the people. I asked Boss Ye to invite the bosses of the major bookstores in the capital in the name of cooperation and teach them the movable type printing technology. In order to get the greatest benefits in the early stage, they will definitely not take the initiative to tell others about this method. On the contrary, they will keep the secret for as long as they can. Yu has helped me again. Shang Junlin suddenly hugged Xinyu. The Prime Minister also told me 2 days ago that if Yu enters the court, his achievements will not lose to him. I also think so. Oh. Xinyu's eyes narrowed slightly. Your Majesty also thinks that I should enter the court. Whether you enter the court or not, you can only be mine. Chapter 146. Why would Prime Minister say something like that? Xinyu didn't remember that he had any interaction with the Prime Minister. The methods that Yu gave us, Xin didn't hide them from Prime Minister. Shang Junlin put Xinyu down. Prime Minister should be happy to see them. Xinyu didn't comment on this result and asked about another matter. Your Majesty, is there any result from interrogating official Feng and the mysterious force that you captured? Shang Junlin, there is a result from Feng Pingqi's side. This time, he was only following the orders of that force and didn't know much about the inside story of Subei. Xinyu, he didn't know about the people of the northern desert. Shang Junlin, yes, the result of several interrogations was the same. He only provided information about the Imperial Court's disaster relief and, conveniently, have blocked the memorials that came from Subei. Xinyu, what benefits did the other party promise him? Shang Junlin sneered, it's nothing more than that. Wealth, power, or something else, there's always something that can move him. Once greed was born, it wouldn't disappear easily. Feng Pingqi was able to enter the cabinet back then because of the help of those people. In return, he needed to do things for those people. Spreading rumors that were not beneficial to Jin was one of them. The matter of Subei was also one of them. Shang Junlin added as he stroked Xinyu's long hair. Hearing this result, Xinyu wasn't surprised. Shang Junlin's unfavorable rumors had been around from the beginning. The other party had been dormant for many years and was an important official of the Imperial Court. Even if Shang Junlin didn't have the habit of explaining things to others, official Feng shouldn't be ignorant of the inside story. The more inside information one knew, the easier it would be for one to find something that could be manipulated. Half-truths and half-lies had always been the hardest to expose. That was because the truth fabricated for the people with inside information would be very credible at first glance. What about Prince Yu? What's the connection between them and Prince Yu? Shin Yu didn't forget that Prince Yu was also one of the people who worked tirelessly to defame Shang Junlin. For the time being, there is no evidence to prove that there is any connection between them. Feng Pingqi also refuses to admit that he and the King of Yu are in cahoots. Without enough evidence, the Ministry of Justice can't force him to plead guilty. He has confessed to all the other crimes with conclusive evidence. What about the other force that was captured? Did they reveal anything? Shang Junlin shook his head. That person is very stubborn. The Ministry of Justice has interrogated him for so many days, but other than the matter of defaming me and Su Bei, they couldn't get anything else out of him. Lord Feng, were you also instructed by those people when you drugged me? When I fell ill outside the palace, were they also the ones who did it? Shin Yu's suspicions were the same as Shang Junlin's. After the people were captured, Shang Junlin immediately asked people to interrogate them about this matter. The results were similar to what they had expected. They admitted to this matter, but when they were asked why they did it, they began to ignore other things. I am very concerned about the reason behind it. Lord Feng was one of the people who pushed me to choose you to enter the palace. If they really didn't want you to enter the palace, they should have excluded you from the beginning. When the candidates were chosen to enter the palace, as the only legitimate son of Duke Shinbei, Shin Yu shouldn't have been on the list. However, his name was on the list and he entered the palace in the end. What was going on at that time? Your Majesty has always refused to choose anyone to enter the harem. Why did you agree to it that time? Shin Yu was quite curious. Shang Junlin had only agreed to it once in his 2 lifetimes. I can't explain it clearly. At that time, the court was arguing fiercely. I was annoyed, so I relented. Now it seems that it was fortunate that I relented at that time. Otherwise, you wouldn't have entered the palace. Speaking of this, Shang Junlin felt slightly relieved. If it wasn't me who entered the palace at that time, but someone else, what would your Majesty do? Will His Majesty and him be like us now? How could that be? Shang Junlin couldn't help laughing. My original plan was to find a random palace for him to live in. Didn't they want to send someone in? I can do as they wish. However, this person's life in the palace isn't something they can control. I won't care, and it's impossible for me to treat him the same as I treated you. In this world, only Shin Yu was special. Shang Junlin thought that those people probably didn't expect that the person they spent so much effort to send into the palace not only didn't do as they wished, but also brought many obstacles to them. The Minister of Works borrowed a few people from the Ministry of Rights to help with the examination. This was the first time the Ministry of Works had done something like this. The Minister of Works was a nitpicky person. In order to ensure that no mistakes were made in the process, he kept a close watch. Those who wanted to participate in the examination were eagerly anticipating the arrival of the final day. A few close friends gathered together to talk about the examination. If I can pass, I'll be a member of the Ministry of Works in the future. It'll be much more honorable. Have you seen the examination process? At first, I thought it would be similar to the imperial examinations. I didn't expect it to be completely different. I remember that one of the tests requires you to show what you're good at. What do you think? What I'm good at? I'm better at forging. Do I have to forge during the examination? Everyone was full of anticipation for this examination. The imperial court was still busy with the matter of Su Bei and official Feng. After knowing that official Feng didn't collude with the people of the northern desert, the people in the imperial court heaved a sigh of relief. Taking this opportunity, Shang Junlin wantonly cleaned up the power in the imperial court. His actions were so big that all the officials focused on this matter. They didn't notice some changes among the people. For example, a few big bookstores among the people jointly published a very basic literacy book. It was mainly sold to the common people. For example, other than the people's daily newspaper, another kind of newspaper quietly appeared in the capital. Different from the people's daily newspaper, this new newspaper talked about some interesting things among the people. There were also some stories that were obviously more of an entertainment nature. A newspaper wasn't expensive. Many literate people bought it out of curiosity. The storytellers in the restaurants and tea houses developed a new profession as newspaper readers. These changes didn't attract the attention of the aristocratic families. Their attention was focused on the imperial court. Official Feng was a big tree. When the tree fell, the monkeys scattered. The power of the imperial court changed greatly because of his fall. At this time, everyone hoped that they could reap more benefits. Shang Junlin coldly watched their open and covert struggles. This wasn't the first time such a situation happened in front of him. The disputes in the capital didn't affect Su Bei. According to the clues given by Yaoji, Fang Jun carefully investigated those businessmen. He found that they all had something in common with Boss Sunday. They all suddenly rose at a certain time and then controlled the business in Su Bei as quickly as possible. Su Bei was remote and the business development was far inferior to the south. This also caused, except for these big businessmen who were inextricably linked to Boss Sun, the other businessmen were all small businessmen with little influence. Fang Jun told He Qingyu and Jiang Huiqing all the information he found. He Qingyu had gained the trust of Boss Sunday. During this time, he gradually got to know a lot of businessmen. They were all introduced by Boss Sunday. After comparing with the information secretly sent by official Fang, the two found that the two sides were very similar. It seems that these people also know. Jiang Huiqing tapped the table. The third transaction went smoothly. Boss Sun's guard against us has been lowered to the lowest. It's almost time to close the net. Before the fourth transaction, Boss Sun came to visit. This time, they need some different goods. He Qingyu poured tea for the two of them and pushed one of the cups in front of Boss Sunday. What is it? It was sent from the vassal king's fief. See if there is anything else you want. Qingyu opened the booklet. Inside it was a list of all the birthday gifts that were sent to him by various vassals. In order to cater to his preferences, the list was basically filled with all kinds of treasures. Shen Yu was about to say something when someone suddenly appeared in the room. The leader of the hidden dragon guards half knelt on the ground. His voice was emotionless. I didn't do a good job. After I brought that person to the capital, he escaped. I am willing to accept the punishment. Chapter 147. Shen Yu was astonished. How can someone escape from the hidden dragon guards? Tell me, what happened? Shang Junlin asked coldly. After my men brought him back to the capital, I brought my men to meet him. At first, he was very cooperative. However, when we were about to reach the palace, he suddenly disappeared. Suddenly disappeared. Yes, I locked him in a room with all the doors and windows tightly shut. I also arranged hidden dragon guards to guard the room. At first, he tried to talk to the people outside, but no one paid any attention to him, so he gradually quieted down. About 15 minutes later, when I went in again, there was no one inside. The hidden dragon guards did not know how to lie. Furthermore, the leader was not the only one who was present at the scene. If he could escape so easily, how did you catch him? Shen Yu asked. The hidden dragon guards found him in King Yu's fief. He seemed to be hiding from someone. He did not resist and was taken away by us. He did not do anything on the way. The leader of the hidden dragon guards frowned. He seemed to be too obedient. The hidden dragon guards were ordered by Shang Junlin to capture him. At first, Shang Junlin ordered them to kill him. Since he could say such things, regardless of whether it was true or not, it would cause King Yu to attack Shin Yu. Based on this point alone, Shang Junlin did not want to keep him alive. After that, it was Shin Yu who requested to meet this person. Shang Junlin then changed his mind. You guys can even lose him in the capital. You guys are really good. Shang Junlin felt the temperature around him drop. He was very hostile towards the culprit who caused King Yu to befriend Shin Yu. I will not punish you now. The person disappeared in the capital. No matter what method you use, I want to see this person in 3 days. If you can do it, you can forget about your position. Yes. Just like how he came, the leader of the hidden dragon guards disappeared from the room silently. Has that person been caught and brought to Beijing? Shin Yu poured 2 cups of tea and placed 1 cup beside Shang Junlin's hand. Yes, Shang Junlin frowned, obviously in a bad mood. We originally planned to tell you when they arrived, but we didn't expect them to lose sight of it. To be able to escape under the watch of the hidden dragon guards, he either has a spy in the capital city or he has a problem. I am curious. There were so many opportunities along the way. Why did he choose to escape after entering the capital city? Shin Yu took a sip of tea. I will ask the hidden dragon guards and the Imperial Army to pay more attention to the movements in the capital. No matter if it was the former or the latter, the person went missing in the capital. Shang Junlin had to pay more attention to it. What Shang Junlin didn't say was that what he was really worried about was whether that person had any magical abilities and whether what he said to King Yu back then was true. Why don't we go and see King Yu? Maybe he knows something. Shin Yu suggested. Since that person knew King Yu, he couldn't have only said 1 sentence to King Yu. Other than that matter, did he say anything else to King Yu? Shin Yu had never seen such a person beside King Yu in his previous life. He had also never heard King Yu talk about this person. Was it because this person didn't exist in his previous life, or was it because something happened in between that caused King Yu to completely forget about this person? What happened in his previous life couldn't be traced back. However, in this life, King Yu was still locked up in a secret prison. Maybe he could get some useful information from him. After many days, Shin Yu met King Yu again. The current King Yu was very different from how Shin Yu remembered him to be in his previous life. He was like a stone that used external forces to make himself shine. Now, he had lost his shine and was only left with a dim interior. Shin Yu couldn't help but wonder if he had really loved this man in his previous life. Hearing the sound of footsteps approaching, King Yu raised his head absent-mindedly. The moment he saw the person approaching, the confusion in his eyes was replaced by shock and hatred. It seems that you haven't become stupid after being locked up. Shang Junlin's tone was indifferent, as if he was stating an unimportant matter. Why didn't Imperial brothers stay in the Imperial Palace? Why did you come here? Did you finally realize that the emperor you appointed didn't have you in his heart? King Yu didn't hide his malice. If I didn't pretend to be His Majesty, would I pretend to be you? Originally, I couldn't compare with His Majesty. Now, I'm even. Shin Yu looked at King Yu from top to bottom. The disgust on his face was obvious. The resentment in King Yu's eyes was even more intense. He was like this because of them. If it weren't for these 2 people's treachery, how could he end up like this? He should be enjoying the love and respect of his people in his fief, enjoying good wine and delicious food. He shouldn't be like this, trapped in a cold and damp secret prison, unable to see the light of day. Chen Yu took a step forward and was stunned to find that the Prince of Yu had uncontrollably taken a step back. He had a strange expression on his face. Just how blind was he in his previous life to fall in love with such a person and be willing to do so many things for him? The mystery of his previous life seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. Shang Junlin came over and held Shin Yu's waist, interrupting his thoughts. Do you know a person called Zhu Wang? Shang Junlin didn't forget the purpose of this trip. King Yu's face suddenly changed. Suddenly, he laughed, so that's how it is. It turns out that he didn't only tell me. No wonder you, who usually don't have feelings for others, dote on Shin Yu so much. Ha ha ha. Now you are asking me this question in front of him. Aren't you afraid that I will tell him your secret? What secret? Is it the sentence, the one who gets the Shin family will get the world? Shin Yu's eyes were half closed and his gaze fell on King Yu. You know. King Yu's laughter stopped abruptly. His smile was mixed with malice, which made his face even more distorted. Since you know, why are you still willing to stay by his side? He couldn't see the expression on Shin Yu's face, but he was happy to make these two unhappy. The malice in his heart almost overflowed. Shin Yu, oh Shin Yu, don't forget that you are not the only child of Duke Shinbei. Believe it or not, my good brother can dote on you because of this sentence today. In the future, he can also give all of this to Shin Qingran. He has always been like this. He doesn't care about other people's feelings at all. Feeling the arm around his waist suddenly tighten, Shin Yu patted him to comfort him. He knew what kind of person Shang Junlin was. On the other hand, King Yu, so you admit that you hooked up with Shin Qingran while you were in contact with me? You approached me with ulterior motives from the beginning. What you wanted was neither me nor Shin Qingran. What you wanted was what we represented. You are already like this. How dare you talk about others with such certainty? King Yu's words were blocked in his mouth again. He opened his mouth but found that he couldn't refute. Ignoring the embarrassed look on King Yu's face, Shin Yu continued to ask, I'm quite curious. No matter what, you are a dignified king. You wouldn't believe a word from others, right? Oh, yes, you not only believed it, but you also took action. In the end, you ended up in prison. Do you really think that what that person said is true? King Yu was stunned. He had never considered that this sentence might be false. After hearing the proverb, he gathered his confidants to discuss countermeasures. What was he thinking at that time? No matter whether this sentence was true or false, he had to try. What happened later? Why did he believe that this sentence was true? King Yu covered his head and thought for a while. Suddenly, he calmed down and said, Since you believe that this sentence is false, why did you ask me? I have never believed in these things. I just want to know your motive for approaching a Yu. A Yu grew up in the capital and had no interaction with you. Why did you choose him? Shang Junlin's tone was calm. Only when he mentioned Shin Yu did he show some fluctuations. Don't you already know the reason? King Yu looked at Shin Yu. I admit that my motive for approaching you is not pure. But other than this, I was sincere in everything else, including seducing Shin Qingran from the bottom of your heart. Shin Yu interrupted his words that he thought were affectionate. King Yu was speechless. Don't talk about whether you are sincere or not. Even if you say it, you won't believe it. I just want to know what Zhu Wang did to make you believe that sentence without any doubt. I met him by accident when I first arrived at the fief. The locals all call him Mr. Zhu. He saved me once, and before he left, he gave me a brocade pouch, saying that the things inside could help me get through 3 difficulties. I accepted the brocade pouch skeptically, and not long after, I encountered my first difficulty. Even if King Yu did not say the rest, Shin Yu and Shang Junlin could guess that the brocade bag had indeed helped King Yu overcome 3 difficulties. With this premise, it was not surprising that he became friends with Shin Yu and Shin Qingran because of this sentence. His whereabouts were a mystery. I could not make him stay. Later on, something happened and he stayed in the residence for a short period of time. Not long after, he disappeared again. It matched the information that the hidden dragon guards had found. Shin Yu and Shang Junlin were released from the secret prison. Not only did they not feel less confused, they were even more curious about Zhu Wang's existence. Your Majesty, how much credibility do you think King Yu's words have? On the way back to the palace, Shen Yu asked. Shang Junlin, I still remember the 3 things that he said. Not long after King Yu arrived at his fief, there was a riot. Before the imperial court could take action, the riot was suppressed. I always thought that it was the forces that the late emperor left behind for him. Shen Yu, King Yu's fief was rich and the people were living in peace. Why would there be a riot? The late emperor was biased towards King Yu. Before he died, he had already decided on King Yu's fief. It was a very good place. After Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he had too many things to do. He just wanted to send King Yu away as soon as possible. He did not care about the fief and sent King Yu there directly. Shang Junlin frowned. Because there were too many things to do at that time, and King Yu had dealt with the riot and the fief by himself, I did not ask further. Does Yu suspect that there's something wrong with this riot? King Yu described that person as mysterious. I don't think so. What if it was arranged by someone from the start? Shen Yu supported his chin with one hand. If there was a riot after the brocade sachet, it means that Zhu Wang is indeed capable. But who can be sure that the brocade sachet was obtained first? There were more questions now. Why did that person do this? Could it be that he wanted King Yu to believe his words without a doubt? To be more specific, was it to make King Yu believe in the saying, the one who gets the Shen family will get the world? When the hidden dragon guards catch them, we will know what they want to do. Suddenly, the carriage stopped. The guard outside the carriage reported, Your Majesty, there is a person who calls himself Mr. Zhu. He wants to see you. Chapter 148. The person that the hidden dragon guards were looking for suddenly appeared in front of them. It was unbelievable. Shen Yu looked at Shang Junlin and saw the same confusion in his eyes. Of course, since the person came to them, there was no reason for them not to meet him. The carriage door opened and Shang Junlin alighted first. Shen Yu followed behind him. The person who called himself Mr. Zhu stood not far away from them. The guards stared at him as though he was their greatest enemy. Shen Yu and Shang Junlin took a few steps forward. This was the first time Shen Yu saw Mr. Zhu. The man was wearing a lacquered robe. His long hair was tied behind his head. He was younger than Shen Yu had imagined. His facial features were ordinary and gave people a strange feeling. The most eye-catching thing was his eyes. They were deep and bottomless. It was as though he had everything in his eyes. Mr. Zhu was also looking at Shang Junlin and Shen Yu. The moment he saw their faces, he was stunned. Although he returned to normal in a short period of time, Shen Yu still noticed it. Shen Yu was very sure that he had never seen this person before. From the looks of it, this person shouldn't have seen him before either. Shen Yu lowered his eyes and restrained the contemplation in his eyes. Your Majesty and Gui Jun are a match made in heaven. It is really enviable. Mr. Zhu looked at the two of them for a while and said. Shang Junlin's expression softened. Why are you looking for me? He stood in front of Shen Yu and his body was tense. He was very wary of Mr. Zhu, who appeared and disappeared mysteriously. I wanted to see Your Majesty to confirm something. Now that I have confirmed it, the path of the stars has changed. I should not interfere too much. What do you want to do? Didn't Your Majesty ask someone to bring me to the capital just to meet me? I thought that it would be rude to be escorted here. So, I came alone. Mr. Zhu's words and actions were very calm. It could be said that he was too calm. Even though he was being stared at by so many armed guards, it was as if he didn't feel anything. Shen Yu had been carefully observing this person. In addition to the mysterious feeling, he always felt that this person gave him a very strange feeling. From King Yu's words, this person should be on King Yu's side. He should be hostile to them. This person was too calm. Shin Yu couldn't tell for a moment whether this person was really mysterious or deliberately mystifying. Mr. Zhu has come from afar. Why don't you come into the palace for a chat? The way we invited Mr. Zhu was inappropriate. Mr. Zhu should give us a chance to apologize, Shin Yu said, looking at Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu's gaze once again landed on Shin Yu. This humble Daoist doesn't like to be tied down, so I won't be going to the palace. Shin Yu grabbed Shang Junlin's sleeve. He felt a trace of hatred from this person. Although it was fleeting, he was sure that he didn't feel it wrong. He didn't have any hostility towards Shang Junlin, but he did. It turned out that he wasn't targeting Shang Junlin, but him. Shang Junlin held Shin Yu's hand. When he looked at Mr. Zhu, he unconsciously showed a trace of displeasure. Mr. Zhu is not willing to give any face to the noble emperor's invitation. Mr. Zhu was stunned for a moment. It seemed that he didn't expect things to develop like this. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. This humble Daoist didn't mean that. Then why did you refuse? You should know that many people want to be invited by me but can't get it. If you don't give me face, you don't give His Majesty face. Despising His Majesty is a serious crime. Shin Yu looked arrogant. Noble Emperor is right. Shang Junlin nodded in agreement. He looked at Mr. Zhu with an even more unfriendly gaze. It was as if he was an emperor whose dignity had been challenged. It was as if he was telling Mr. Zhu to go even if he didn't want to. In the end, Mr. Zhu still followed them to the palace. Why did you insist on inviting Mr. Zhu to the palace? After returning to Yuzhang Palace, Shang Junlin hugged Mr. Zhu and sat on the couch. Mr. Zhu was arranged to stay in a separate palace. The hidden dragon guards were secretly watching his every move. This person gives me a very strange feeling. I can feel hatred towards me from him, but I don't have any interactions with him. Hatred couldn't be generated for no reason. There had to be a trigger. He had never even met Mr. Zhu before, so where was the trigger? If he hated me from the start, it wouldn't be strange for him to say something like that. He used one sentence to put me on the altar. When I was at my proudest, he used one sentence to push me to hell. I won't believe his words. Shang Junlin hugged Shin Yu tightly. I don't believe in ghosts and gods. If there were really gods and Buddhas, why didn't they appear when the world was suffering? That proverb is even more ridiculous. Since when did the world change its master just because you have someone? Under the hidden dragon guard's strict guard, Mr. Zhu couldn't easily escape from the palace this time. Since Shang Junlin discovered that there was something wrong with Mr. Zhu, he naturally wouldn't let him go so easily. Mr. Zhu paced back and forth in the room. He thought that Shang Junlin would at least be afraid of the mysterious power. After he showed his mysterious power, even if Shang Junlin didn't treat him like a god like King Yu, he should still treat him with respect. But what was the result? He was too careless and underestimated this king who had killed his way out of the battlefield. He should have thought about it earlier. How could Shang Junlin and Shang Junhua be the same? Unfortunately, he realized it too late. Mr. Zhu only realized that something was wrong the next day. Shin Yu said that he would apologize to him, but ever since he entered the palace, Shin Yu and Shang Junlin didn't appear. On the first day, they told him to rest for a day. On the second day, he realized that there were many hidden presences around him. Even the palace servants gave him a strange feeling. He didn't have any evidence to prove it, but he believed in his intuition. This feeling reached its peak when he tried to walk out of the palace but was stopped. After a while, he realized that he seemed to have delivered himself to their doorstep. Shang Junlin originally wanted to catch him. After he escaped, he took the initiative to appear in front of the two of them. Wasn't he walking right into their trap? Your Majesty, did Zhu Wang realize that something was wrong? Xin Yu sat under the shade of a tree. Although it was a question, there wasn't much doubt in his tone. It's too late. The hidden dragon guards are guarding there. I don't believe that he can escape. How's the situation in Subei? Can official Fang rush back to participate in the autumn hunt? The position in the imperial cabinet had been vacant for a long time. After many failed attempts, the courtiers vaguely realized that the emperor already had a candidate in mind. It was just that he wasn't in the capital and couldn't give the position to someone else. It should be soon. He Qingyu and the others have already gained the trust of the other side. They are just waiting for the last moment. Regardless of whether it was He Qingyu or Jiang Huaiqing, they were all waiting. He Qingyu thought about it and agreed to do this business with Boss Sunday. I know that you have concerns in your heart. This is normal. After all, some goods are not allowed to be traded. But don't worry, I have been doing business with them for a long time. I have also invited others to do business with them. There has never been any problems. Hearing the reply, Boss Sun's smile deepened. It was normal to have concerns. It was still the same sentence. If He Qingyu didn't have any concerns at all and directly agreed, he would be worried. Everyone who worked with him had such concerns in the beginning. But in the end, they couldn't resist the temptation behind the deal. It was true that there were risks, but the profits were also huge. After tasting the sweetness, they couldn't let go of it anymore. Boss Sun was very confident that no one could resist the temptation. After this deal was successful, both parties would be tied to the same boat. When they truly became one of us, they wouldn't have to worry so much anymore. Both parties had their own ideas. On the surface, they looked happy and harmonious. Since He Qingyu agreed, the two of them started to discuss some details. Jiang Huaiqing sat next to He Qingyu. He seemed uninterested and absent-minded, but in fact, he was quickly analyzing Boss Sun's words in his mind. In order to hit the nail on the head, they needed to make more preparations. In the end, the two of them were very satisfied with the result of the discussion, at least on the surface. Boss Sun smiled and drank the tea in his cup. Before you go this time, I will introduce some other bosses to you. We have all worked together for many years. There will be many opportunities to get along in the future. Thank you, Boss Sun, for your recommendation. It's my first time in Subei. Thank you for meeting Boss Sunday, you flatter me. It's also my great fortune to be able to meet Boss Gu. The conversation could be said to be very pleasant. He Qingyu passed the news to Boss Fang. It just so happened that Boss Fang had also found a lot of clues by investigating other people. According to the results of their investigation, these people would have a deal during this period of time, but they hadn't found out the specific time and place. He Qingyu's news was like timely rain, just enough to fill in the parts that they hadn't found out. Jiang Huaiqing poured a cup of tea for He Qingyu, then walked to the other side with the teacup and sat down. Brother Qingyu, what do you think Boss Sun's expression will be on that day? He thought that everything was under control, but he didn't know that he had fallen into a big net woven by others from the beginning. We'll know when the time comes. I think the expression on his face will be very good. It's a pity that we haven't found any clues about the whereabouts of those women. When we catch them, are you afraid that we won't be able to interrogate them? What can't we get from Boss Fang's subordinates? That's true. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Boss Sun sent a carriage to pick them up and take them to the transaction site. The sound of horse hooves was neither light nor heavy. Jiang Huaiqing and He Qingyu sat in the carriage. The person driving the carriage was sent by Boss Sunday. This time, they went there to talk about business first. The real deal would begin after the discussion. The curtain of the carriage was lifted a small gap. Jiang Huiqing looked outside and found that he was completely unfamiliar with the road. Putting down the curtain, the two of them didn't speak anymore. The carriage stopped. The two of them got out of the carriage. A maid came up to them and led them to the main hall. The carriage was parked directly in the courtyard. Jiang Huiqing and He Qingyu didn't know what the courtyard looked like, but the layout inside was enough to shock them. It was hard to imagine that they could see such a garden in Subei. It was as if they were in a prosperous place like the capital. Looking around, every place was extremely exquisite. They didn't have much time to look at it. A door appeared in front of them. When the door was pushed open, Boss Sun came up to them and warmly invited them in. "I've finally met you. The person sitting here is the boss who we will often cooperate with in the future. Let's get to know each other first." Jiang Huiqing stood beside He Qingyu and calmly looked at the people sitting together. These people just happened to match Boss Fang's description.